What's good, y'all? It's your boy Saint Quam back with another video. Welcome back to Quam's Corner. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the top 10 rap albums of all time. So what makes a great rap album? Well, a great rap album makes you feel like you've got a glimpse into a sonic world created by an artist. The best rap albums have the ability to transport us to the cities the rappers grew up in, the era of time the album was made in, and to the very place where we first listened to the album. I'm going to be ranking these albums based on writing, concepts, production, sequencing, and cohesion. Before we jump into the top 10, let's take a look at the honorable mentions. The first honorable mention is Get Rich or Die Trying. It's hard to put into words just how big this album was when it came out in 2003. 50 teamed up with legendary producer Dr. Dre and legendary MC Eminem at the time, and he was set up for success. The album had hip-hop classics like In the Club, PIMP, and 21 Questions. It's a personal favorite of mine that I don't see in many top 10 lists, but in my opinion, it's up there.
Better watch how you talk when you talk about me, cause I'll come and take your life away.
The second honorable mention is All Eyes on Me, the last album Tupac released before he passed. It was a double full-length album that showed his range as an artist, with records like Two of America's Most Wanted with Snoop Dogg and tracks like How Do You Want It with Casey and JoJo. I tend to pick out my favorite tracks from this album more than I enjoy it as a whole body of work, but I still think it deserves a mention because it's one of the best albums from one of the best rap artists ever, and it had an influence on many other rappers that followed the trend of double disc albums after this one came out.
Fiending for money and alcohol, the life of a West Side player with cows out and a strong ball.
The third and final honorable mention is The Carter 3 by Lil Wayne. Yes, I know a lot of hate has been thrown towards his latest effort, The Carter 6, but in 2008, Weezy was at the height of his powers, and when The Carter 3 came out, it was a supernova in the music industry that left enough debris from the explosion to birth new stars like Nicki and Drake. It's hard to strike a balance between being commercial, personal, and eclectic, and I think Lil Wayne struck that balance perfectly on this album, influencing a sea of artists while doing it as well. I just wanted to give some love to a legend who has put so much into the game.
Doing the buck in the latest drop. I got stopped by a later cop.
Okay, now that we've gotten the honorable mentions out the way, let's jump into the top 10. Number 10 is Doggy Style, Snoop Dogg's debut album released in '93. Snoop went by Snoop Doggy Dogg at the time, and he was signed with Death Row and Interscope Records. Doggy Style is widely considered a West Coast rap classic album, responsible for bringing the G-Funk sound into prominence in the 90s. Similar to The Chronic by Dr. Dre that Snoop Dogg was heavily featured on. The formula they formed with Dr. Dre with the G-Funk beats and Snoop with the smooth flow on the mic was gold, and they used it all over the Doggy Style album. The track list has classics like Gin and Juice, Who Am I, What's My Name, but also deeper cuts like Murder Was the Case. The thread throughout this cohesive album was Snoop's effortless delivery and charismatic persona, which outshined his lack of lyrical depth. The album was a commercial success, selling over 800K first week and thrusting Snoop Dogg into international stardom. It's an album that's an easy listen that has aged very well, in my opinion.
From the depths of the sea, back to the block, Snoop Doggy Dogg, Funky is the doc.
Number 9 goes to the Marshall Mathers LP by Eminem, released in 2000 under Aftermath and Interscope Records. This album turned Eminem into a global superstar with his controversial, satirical, and hardcore approach to hip-hop. This album had hits like The Real Slim Shady, The Way I Am, and Stan, the last of which became a commonly used term for superfan, which just shows the type of impact Eminem had on the culture at the time. The album was a commercial smash, selling 1.7 million records in the first week, and has become one of the best-selling albums of all time, with 25 million copies sold worldwide. For an album that sold so well, Eminem showed a high level of skill as a writer, rapper, and entertainer. It has production credits from Dr. Dre, and it's worth mentioning that there have been 3 albums so far on my list with Dr. Dre production, and he's a big reason some of the albums are on the list. But with Eminem being a white rapper in a space dominated by black artists, I think he went to extreme lengths to prove that his merit was based on his skill, imagination, and execution. It's still one of the most shocking, funny, and imaginative rap albums ever made, and it's number 9 on my rap album list.
The way I am, sometimes I just feel like my father. I hate to be bothered.
Number 8 is Reasonable Doubt, another debut album on this list. This time by Brooklyn rapper Jay-Z, widely considered one of the best rappers of all time, and Reasonable Doubt is one of his best albums. It was tough for me to pick this over The Blueprint, but I think his first album is special for a few reasons. Jay-Z's approach to rap from this mafioso, luxury hustler perspective was ahead of its time. With the hindsight of being able to see who Jay-Z has become, it only adds more validity to this album, which was a manifesto of his way of seeing the world, a mindset which led him to the very top. Songs like Can't Knock the Hustle, Politics as Usual, and Can I Live became anthems for anyone aspiring for more in life. Hip-hop at the time was focused on cashing in on telling stories of struggle and violence, and Jay-Z chose to focus on the ambition and mentality behind wealth creation, and so many other MCs began to follow his lead. It's a mature album that I always come back to, and I think it deserves all the props of being a top 10 rap album.
Something to watch, nothing to stop. Unstoppable, scheme on the ice. I gotta hot your crew.
The number 7 greatest rap album of all time goes to The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. That came out in 1998. Lauryn Hill had been a key member of the Fugees, who had seen a lot of success with their sophomore album The Score, with the major hit Killing Me Softly, that prominently featured Lauryn singing. Lauryn was both a talented singer and rapper, and after her work with the Fugees, it was clear that she could be a star on her own. And that's exactly what she did with The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. The album had a mix of hip-hop tracks like Lost Ones and R&B songs like X Factor right after it. This album could be higher on the list if it was solely a rap album, but when she does rap, the messaging and delivery is some of the best we've heard in hip-hop. And she paved the way for future artists that also rap and sing. But I'd argue that no other artist has successfully combined these two skills the way she did. This album is very cohesive, with classroom-themed skits about concepts she's talking about in her songs, so you could tell it's very well thought out. It was an immediate success and landed her a record-breaking 10 nominations and 5 wins at the Grammys. This album cemented Lauryn as a legend in the game, and that should say a lot about how good the album is.
Lauryn is only human. Don't think I haven't been through the same predicament.
Number 6 is Aquemini by Atlanta duo Outkast, with the album being a shout out to their respective zodiac signs, Big Boy being the Aquarius and Andre 3000 the Gemini. This was the rap group's 3rd album, and it came out in 1998, the same year as Lauryn's album that we just talked about. The 90s were a good time in hip hop. Shout out to all the 90s babies watching this video. Okay, back to Aquemini. This album is a trip into the minds of Andre 3000 and Big Boy, a trip into funk, southern soul, and psychedelic rock, and into one of the best hip-hop albums ever made. The album had singles like Skew It on the Barbie, Rosa Parks, The Art of Storytelling, that made noise, but it was album cuts like Spotty Yachty Dopalicious that made the album truly special. It had features from artists like Erykah Badu to Raekwon and George Clinton. It showed off Outkast's range and eclectic taste, covering topics from human nature, technology, individuality, and relationships. It went on to be both a commercial and critical success for the hip-hop group, setting them up for even larger feats in their careers. I think this album did a good job of representing Outkast's southern roots with production from Organized Noise, but packaged it in a way that music lovers from across the globe could tap in and relate to. It's a masterful album that only gets better with time.
Many a day has passed, the night has gone by, but still I find the time to put that bomb off in your eye.
Number 5 goes to Life After Death by Notorious B.I.G. This was Biggie's final album while still alive, and it came out in 1997. It was a sequel to his first album, Ready to Die, and picks up where the last song, Suicidal Thoughts, ends. It came out 16 days after his untimely passing, which made the title and the album's subject matter even more eerie. The title of the album led into conspiracy theories and speculation surrounding his death. B.I.G., who was signed to Bad Boy at the time, was in the middle of the East Coast-West Coast hip-hop rivalry, and Tupac had just passed away a few months before this album was released. Biggie traveled to the West Coast in February of '97 to promote the album and to shoot a video for Hypnotize, 2 weeks before the album was supposed to be released, but he was shot 4 times in a drive-by. The album still came out to critical acclaim, with many praising Biggie's storytelling, lyrical abilities, and cinematic themes of crime and mafioso raps. The album had hits like Hypnotize, More Money, More Problems, and Going Back to Cali, and it featured artists like 112, Jay-Z, Bone Thugs and Harmony, and The Lox. This album is Biggie's magnum opus, and it showed the world his capabilities as an MC, balancing his gritty tales of street violence and drug dealing with the glitz and glamour that the lifestyle of being a rap star could afford him. The blueprint that Biggie laid down for gangsta rap is one that many artists have followed, and it's one of the greatest rap albums ever made, for sure.
Federal agents mad cause I'm flagrant. Tap myself and the phone in the basement.
The fourth greatest rap album of all time is My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, Kanye's 5th album. It came out in 2010 following a weekly Good Friday series where Kanye would put out free music to promote the album. The album had singles like All of the Lights, Monster, Power, and Runaway, and it also came out with a short film titled Runaway. Kanye took on a maximalist approach to hip-hop, sparing no expense, recording most of the album in Hawaii, following a strict daily regimen, and wearing suits in the studio. He was on a mission at the time, because he was on exile after interrupting Taylor Swift at the 2009 MTV Awards. So he wanted to make an album that was so undeniable that he would be back in the public's good graces, and he succeeded. The production on the album was opulent, and it had elements of Baroque, rock, pop, and soul. He was rapping about the American dream, his celebrity status, and consumer culture, all while showing why he was a self-proclaimed musical genius. He was orchestrating this twisted fantasy that had features from Rick Ross, Jay-Z, Nicki Minaj, Rihanna, and Pusha T. It was one of the most luxurious and expensive sounding hip-hop albums ever made. I think College Dropout also deserves consideration in the top 10, but I feel like My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is a more polished and finished product that offers more replay value. But that's just my opinion.
Face it, Jerome get more time than Brandon, and at the airport they check all through my bag and tell me that it's random.
Now we're getting into the top 3 hip-hop albums of all time. If you've made it this far into the video, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Good looks. At number 3, we have 36 Chambers by the Wu-Tang Clan. This album came out in '93, and it turned the Staten Island hip-hop collective into a global sensation and movement. The album featured verses from members RZA, GZA, Method Man, Ghostface Killah, Inspectah Deck, U-God, Master Killer, and Old Dirty Bastard. It was mainly produced by RZA, and it had singles like Protect Your Neck, Cream, and Can It All Be So Simple, which is my personal favorite track. The album is credited with revitalizing East Coast hip-hop at a time when the mainstream was really dominated by West Coast gangsta rap albums like Doggy Style and The Chronic. Wu-Tang's sound was rough, rugged, and raw. This could have been a result of RZA not having the best mixing and recording equipment, but that raw sound is a huge reason why the album sounds so real and tangible. It's like you were right there in the studio when RZA queued up the beat and a cypher just broke out. The album's sound matched the gritty urban environment that the Wu-Tang grew up in, and the Wu-Tang slang they would use on the records made the verses sound original. Each member brought something different to the table and went on to have amazing solo careers. Method Man had a solo track on the album and was queued up to be the first solo star, but you could hear the immense talent that MCs like Raekwon, Ghostface Killah, and Inspectah Deck also had. This album is the soul of hip-hop. It's making the most out of what you have around you and telling your story in your own way, and it's a classic for sure.
My life got no better. Same damn low sweater. Times is rough and tough like leather.
The runner-up for best rap album of all time is To Pimp a Butterfly, Kendrick Lamar's sophomore album that came out in 2015 and quickly became hailed as one of the best rap albums of the decade. And now that it's been a decade since it came out, its legend has only grown. Kendrick Lamar sets the bar high when it comes to his albums and his discography. I think an argument could be made for his album Good Kid, Mad City also being on this top 10 list, but the reason I chose to highlight TPAB, as some call it, is that this album is such an artistic statement and timestamp that I think it will ultimately be remembered as his best album, which is saying a lot. My personal favorite album of his is Damn, but I can admit that To Pimp a Butterfly is a more masterful body of work. It's cohesive, incorporating styles over the history of African American music like jazz, funk, and soul. Kendrick was also covering heavy topics like discrimination, depression, and racial inequality. Kendrick has talked about how this album was inspired by a trip he took to South Africa, particularly by Nelson Mandela's story. He visited his jail cell on Robben Island. And you can hear on tracks like Mama and How Much a Dollar Cost that he really had an epiphany and paradigm shift during this trip that he captured on the album. The album also had singles like I, The Black of the Berry, King Kunta, and All Right, which went on to become an anthem during the Black Lives Matter movement. It featured production from Thundercat, Pharrell, Flying Lotus, and Ninth Wonder, and features a distinct, funky, and jazzy sound. I could do a whole video talking about this album, but it's an amazing artistic feat that would take a long time, if not ever, to surpass.
20 of them in my Chevy, tell them all to come and get me, reaping everything I sow, so my karma come in heaven.
The best rap album of all time goes to Illmatic, yet another debut album by none other than Queen's MC, Nas. This album came out in '94 under Columbia Records, after Nas signed with the label held by MC Serch. This album had a dream team of producers from DJ Premier, Pete Rock, Q-Tip, Large Professor to LES. Nas had started gaining the reputation for being a skilled MC after his verse on Live at the Barbecue and his single Halftime. He incorporated multi-syllabic internal rhymes in his verses, garnering comparisons to Rakim. The album had other singles like It Ain't Hard to Tell, Life's a Bee, The World Is Yours, and One Love. My personal favorite on the album is Memory Lane because of his intricate verses and the nostalgic feel of the production. The whole album feels very nostalgic, backtracking to earlier times in African American music history, sampling records like Mind Rain by Joe Chambers, Yearning for Your Love by the Gap Band, I Love Music by the Ahmad Trio, and We're in Love by Reuben Wilson. These jazz and soul sounds infuse the album with a timeless backdrop that Nas used to spit poetry beyond his years. One of the amazing details about this album is how young Nas was at the time of its recording. He was about 18 or 19 at the time, but where he was mentally was way advanced. Some of the themes and motifs Nas would use on the album showed that he must have been a prolific reader from an early age, but cramming philosophy and world history books alone wouldn't give you this type of prowess. Nas also showed that he had an expansive imagination, being able to visualize beyond the Queen's projects that he felt trapped in, and turn that visualization into music form in a way that could be felt by the listeners when they hear it. The World Is Yours as a reminder to have a positive outlook and dream big despite having hard conditions and harsh reality around you. It's no surprise that this album is studied in universities today because it's deep. Listening to it 30 years after its release in '94, it still sounds sharp, it still sounds witty and insightful. J. Cole rapped on his song Let Nas Down, Pac was like Jesus, and Nas wrote the Bible. And it was a fitting bar because Illmatic is like the holy scriptures of rap, something that stands above other works in its depth and truth in ways that make it feel divinely inspired. It's a benchmark for artistic accomplishment in the genre of rap, and I highly doubt another body of work will eclipse its stature.
I sip the Don P, watching Gandhi till I'm charged and writing in my book of rhymes all the words past the margin.
So that's my list, guys. Let me know in the comments what you think of the list. What albums did I miss out? And what album would you have had as your number one? I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I read your comments and I actually can't believe I left out some of the suggestions you make, so keep them coming. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. I got some more videos dropping ASAP. I also just dropped 2 more tracks from my upcoming mixtape on my artist channel, so make sure you head over there and leave some likes and comments. It's greatly appreciated. Till the next time, stay safe. Peace.